Um, yeah. Good evening, cousins. This is the family line meeting for the descendants of Samuel and Lucy Hassall. Lucy Hassall, nee Mileham, and I welcome you to this event, and it's being recorded, as you may have already seen. And I don't have a lot of hard facts. I've got information that I'm not too sure about, like this line is one of the most prolific lines, and I don't know that, but maybe we'll find out a little bit about that as we go along tonight. So without further ado, I'll pass over I'll get you to have a look at your screens, and Graham, if you could continue with what your content is, please.
Oh, thanks very much, Andrew. I just want to confirm that you can see the PowerPoint presentation. I think you can.
Good.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yep. So this is a brief overview of the lives of Samuel and Lucy. And it's going to include some timelines and some new material that has been gleaned from the transcription project. And we wanted to start bringing the benefits of that project forward. So it's a work in progress. There's so many things we don't know, and there's room for everybody to do research or to share what they already know. So let's start at the beginning. Samuel, of course, is the second child of Roland and Elizabeth, and he's born, if you look at the timeline and look at the years, we'll go by the years. In 1796, he's born May 13th in Coventry. And in that same year, just 3 months later, in August, the ship left England bound for Tahiti. And so Samuel is a passenger there, 3 months old. And of course, his older brother, Thomas, is already 2 years old. And it's an epic voyage of 9 months. There are books written about that voyage, but mostly about the religious conversations and disputes and reconciliations and how they're going to proceed with their missionary work. But in the background there, of course, Elizabeth has 2 children on board. And as we know, that voyage went beneath Australia, north of Antarctica, south of Australia, and took 9 months to get to Tahiti. So it's an epic voyage, which deserves a bit more attention as well. And of course, we know the famous etching of the Session of Matavai. And our subject tonight, Samuel, is on the knee of his mother, Elizabeth, and Jonathan is the 2-year-old who's depicted there as well. We won't go into details of others in the photo, but just to give some sort of image of that amazing start to his life. There is some interest around the name Otu, and it's a title that's associated with Tahitian royalty. And the first to use it was Pomare I, the first Pomare, the founder of the Pomare dynasty, and his son followed the Pomare II. And Roland and Elizabeth evidently, at the time that Samuel was born, they already knew that they were bound for Tahiti, and they'd maybe done some reading. And they, as a mark of respect and sort of forward-looking, they thought they'll give their son a second name of Otu. But what they didn't realize, of course, it's a royal title. That you can't just give yourself a royal title. So there's the possibility that wasn't appreciated greatly in Tahiti. But I have read one source that suggested that Pomare was quite amused by this faux pas that the Hassalls did. So let's see if we can work out whether it was a problem or whether it was something that was a source of amusement for the royals there. I'm going to give a few more key dates, and then I'm going to unpack a little of the character of Samuel. Now, we know the story that in 1798, the family escaped Tahiti aboard the Nautilus. And that was a 6-week, I've called it 6 weeks in a leaky boat, because again, sagas abound. They didn't know if they would make it safely to Sydney, but they did. Samuel was age 2 when he arrives in Sydney Cove. And a great number of other events occur in his childhood, including the terrible beating that his father Roland received at the hands of some thieves a couple of years later. But this timeline just gives some of the other key points, the highlights. There are many more, but we can't cover everything in a session like this. But in 1814, just at the age of 18, when Roland is appointed as the superintendent of government stock, Samuel is appointed at the same time as assistant superintendent. So he's aged 18, and he's taking on that considerable responsibility. Now, 3 years later, his brother Thomas departs for theological training in England because he ended up in Wales. So Samuel's age 21. He has other brothers at this stage, of course, brothers and sisters, but he's quite close to Thomas. And it must have been quite a loss for him to see Thomas go, and a lot of uncertainty around that because they weren't sure if Thomas was going to make it safely to England or back. We get to 1819, and of course the famous triple wedding. Samuel and Lucy were two of the 6 who got married on that day, and Samuel's aged 23 at the time. So he's got responsibilities when he's young, and he's married when he's young. And the following year, the birth of his first child, who he names after his father. But the 2 other major events in 1820 are tragic. His father, Roland, passes away. Samuel's just aged 24. He's got his first child. And then a matter of days later, that child passes away of the same fever, catarrhal fever, that gripped Sydney at the time. So by the age of 24, and by the year of 1820, Samuel's very much growing up. He's a family man. And of course, no one knows what the future holds for him. We don't seem to have images of Samuel, but we do have images of Lucy, and these were in the 1998 book. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to focus partly because there's so many areas of focus, we can't go through them all, but his relationship with Thomas was quite special, quite close, quite intimate, really. Thomas, in 1810, by 1810, was working in Sydney as a clerk for Captain Burney, and that was very beneficial for the family because they were in Parramatta, and they would write down to Thomas to see if he could purchase many domestic items that were needed, farm items, because he was right there in the store with Captain Burney. So that was a long-lasting relationship with the Burneys. And I put 1817 in there again because what comes out from the letters is that although these are young men, they already have farm interests, rural interests. They have cattle. And when Thomas departs for England, Samuel, at the age of 21, begins to look after Thomas's affairs. And I think we're still trying to understand the extent to which Samuel continued to look after Thomas's affairs, not only while he's away, but once he came back. We mentioned the triple wedding, 1819, and the passing of his father. Then it's another 2 years before Thomas returns. On January 23rd, he returns from England. And I'm quite sure that Samuel continues to oversee his commercial interests. But Thomas was extremely meticulous with his business interests, but he wasn't on the farm. He wasn't on the properties. He entered into his clerical duties with the Anglican community, and Samuel was doing all the work for him. Now, of course, the other interesting event that happened in 1822 was that on August the 12th, Thomas marries Anne Marsden. That's a story in itself, not for this presentation, but the reason it's there is that everybody knows that Samuel had made overtures to Anne and was rebuffed, and everybody knew it. And then lo and behold, that woman marries his brother. So they have to, in a sense, repair their relationship and for many years after to live in cordial relations, which they did. And they were a very close family. Now I'm going to come to a couple of pages. You can either listen or read, whichever one works for you. But I really want tonight for you to learn something of the educational aspirations of Samuel, which you do not know about, and about his character. And these are the things that I really have been looking forward to an opportunity to share. So this is a letter. Thomas has already left. Samuel's writing to him in November 1817. Thomas is on his way to England, may not be there yet because there were delays in that, but let's get on with looking at this. Samuel writes, "It gives me unspeakable pleasure and gratification to reflect upon the goodness of God in favoring us with the means of corresponding. And although separated at so great a distance from each other, yet we can communicate the various occasions they transpire during our pilgrimage below. He is a truly great blessing bestowed on us, who are not the most deserving, but perhaps the most ungrateful of his people. Seldom do we consider that had it not been for the interposition of a gracious providence, we might have been left to mix with the indigent and unhappy part of mankind. But remember the night at Northern Boundary, when a bleeding father lay upon the ground, left for dead, and a distressed mother with 3 helpless boys, deprived of the necessary comforts of life, besides innumerable instances of the goodness of God, which must fill your heart, as I trust it now does mine, with humble gratitude. Oh, my dear brother, when we reflect upon these events and contrast them with our present circumstances, we must be led to exclaim, what had God done for us, his most unworthy creatures?" Now, there are many more passages in this vein. And they tell me so much about Samuel, a young man, unlettered, uneducated, working in rural circumstances, but writing with such depth to his brother. Now, this is where we learn something about his educational aspirations. And there are 2 or 3 slides that I'm quite sure will be new to you, but I also point out that because these are transcriptions that are still raw, in some cases we are still trying to decipher words. And also he hasn't been greatly schooled, and sometimes the grammar's not correct. But these letters are all from 1818. And this is Roland writing to Thomas. So this is the father writing. "Your brother Samuel now lives in Sydney with Mr. Gilchrist. Mr. G, having received his emancipation, has opened a school in one of Clarkson's houses, and your brother, being very anxious to become one of his scholars, I consented to his going, not wishing to throw any hindrance in the way he wished to improve his mind. He seems something good things, but I know not how the Lord intends to dispose of him in his future providences. The Lord's disposing of us is the best. At least it will be found so in the end, notwithstanding our carnal reasons tells us otherwise at times." Now, Roland's task was to find meaningful occupations for his 4 sons. Thomas was going to be fine because he went to England for training. But what of the other 3? What would they do? So we have a second letter here from James Bradley writing again to Thomas. "Mr. Pierce is servant to your brother Samuel in Sydney, where Mr. Gilmore," well, it's either Gilchrist or Gilmore, "is established in a promising school at which your brother, I trust, will complete his education." Now, the other interesting thing about this is the question of these early days as to whether the free settlers mixed with emancipists or not, in other words, with former convicts. And we know from such letters as this that Roland Hassall was quite comfortable in the company of emancipists, and that's quite different to what we know of Samuel Marsden, for example. But let's look at this third interesting small comment from Sister Mary, sister of Thomas, and that's Mary Cover Hassall. She writes to Thomas, again in May. Often the letters are grouped around particular dates. And do you know why that is? Because they'll hear that there's a boat leaving the harbour, and that will be a signal to get your letters written. So often they're batched together in dates. Brother Samuel returned at 12:30 at night from Bathurst, which is 112 miles. He rode it in one day and changed horses but once. We're reminded that Samuel was as good a horseman as Thomas or Roland. And we also see here that while he's at school in Sydney, he's taking on his responsibilities in Bathurst. Okay, so we're just going to get a little bit deeper into his educational aspirations. Writing to Thomas, later that same year, I began with English grammar, geography, Euclid, together with their various consequent parts, all of which you know me to be very ignorant. I have in the first mentioned gone through the whole of the theory, and now I'm endeavouring to apply the same. The second also, and the third so far as the end of the sixth book, which I believe I comprehend, and is as far as that's the Gilchrist, the teacher, thinks necessary for me to know. I am now taking a course on natural philosophy and surveying, in both of which I have made some small degree of progress and hope to be enabled to continue my laborious studies. And then he gets philosophical, as he does often once he's stated the facts, and then he'll make a statement about contemplation of his condition. I do not state the proceeding to show my vanity, which it might be considered to do, but knowing it will be an unparalleled gratification to you to hear that your brother, who was once the most stupid and ignorant creature that ever existed, should have a desire to dip into the cup of knowledge, and that your earnest desire would be that he should dig deep. Again, I find the extent of the self-revelation of his emotions to his brother quite revealing. And I put this in to show the process by which we've made these transcriptions online. It's an open document. Anybody's able to go in and read these for themselves or to make corrections. So it's not privileged information that I'm sharing with you tonight. Maybe just one or two more, because there's a link here between, well, what happened to his education and why did he end up farming? This is two pages to give this one paragraph. I have much to say, and I think it is only the expense of sending long letters in England which constrain me to shorten my paper. However, it must be a little longer, were it possible for me to be engaged with you in something which I dare say you have commenced before this period. I should be happy, and it would be a great pleasure each morning to rise for the purpose of improving my uncultivated mind, that I might thereby be the instrument to communicate something to others of my fellow creatures. And I really think the nights would appear long. You can form no opinion how I desire knowledge. If I may but attain an easy manner of communicating my thoughts so as to be perfectly understood, I shall consider myself fully repaid for all my labours and be truly thankful. I have now spent half the time allotted to me for that important duty. 12 months is but a short space of time to acquire much knowledge. I was almost afraid to make the attempt, seeing so much was necessary, and I not the most apt. However, I do not regret coming down. What I have already got, in my opinion, repays all my loss. Yet one thing I find, that the more I know, the more I need. However, this is manifest that the acquiring of knowledge is to those who feel its need more pleasant, if agreeable, than hunting kangaroos and ranging the mountains high. And when I look back upon the many uncheckered scenes of my past life, I reflect how it has been spent. It surprises me, seeing it has been so little purpose and productive of so little good. I wish I were able to dig deep and take large draughts out of the fountain of true knowledge. How desirable is a good understanding, a mind well stored with wisdom. It appears to me that a know of things which do in general occur, and which are always revolving around us, is the next essential to the one thing needful. This last is certainly of the most and greatest importance, because it concerns an eternal welfare, which, as the other, tends to extend our earthly comforts and gives us a certain elevated station in life. That man, whoever he may be, who is deficient of common sense, as is the true condition of every ignorant man, though possessed of immense riches and carries his head high in the circle wherein he moves, is not worthy a name in society. For what use can such be of to community, the grand end for which we exist? 'Tis true, I'm stretching a line which must be more becoming of me, to leave for another to do work, but like most of my species must be meddling. Isn't this fascinating?
Very deep and philosophical.
Really, and you know, he's in his early 20s, and he's looking at earthly knowledge and divine knowledge, and which one, you know, we need both, sort of thing, and writing to his brother. I find it very inspiring. Okay, but now we get to the change. So 1819, my dear and much esteemed brother, Providence hath once more favoured me with an opportunity of writing you again, and again see from my old place of residence, the farm, that's Macquarie Grove, that you see hither too, I have had no resting place, but like a troubled sea tossed to and fro. Yet hath God been very merciful in every needful blessing. Hath he blessed me, no doubt, but all these things are for my good. I write thus in order to relieve your mind, because it would be natural for you on the site of Macquarie Grove to reflect on what a whimsical creature I must be, changing my situation every time I write, and consequently set me down as unstable, as water possessing no manner of stability. And here we get to the reason. Having previously stated my reasons for going to live in Sydney, I shall now briefly relate the cause which in a secondary measure brought me away. The farming concerns not going on as well as father could wish, and which caused him to complain much, I engaged to go up during the time of sheep shearing and wheat harvest, thinking as it would be a time of holiday keeping and not much calculated for study, that it would be no loss for me in my studies, and that during that time I might organize the affairs and be permitted to return to my much desired employment. This was not to be the case. He who rules had ordered it otherwise. One event after another arose to cause a continuance. So he's at the end of 1819, Thomas's education is over, and he's now on the land, and he's working on his father's land. Just a few. Now we can't. I don't think anybody's fully got to grips with the land grant, the land situation. This is just a bit of an overview. We know that Roland was granted Macquarie Grove at Camden in 1812, and that's it was never in the possession of Samuel until he inherited it from Roland in 1820. We know that he got a grant in the district of Cook in 1816, which he called Bosworth Farm. And we know he got grants in 1818 on O'Connell Plains, and there were others as well. And then he inherited various parts of land, Liverpool Town allotment and Macquarie Grove and possibly others. So we have these types of maps from early days. This is a plan of cow pasture estates. I don't have a date for that map. Oh, there is a date on there, 47, I think. I'm going to show in larger detail on the next page. And again, I'll it's hard to see the details of the Hassall land grants on here, but there are a few other maps coming. This is getting larger. Now, what we're going to see, this is the same map, and this is the Nepean River. And what we're going to see is Macquarie Grove, which is now Camden Airport. It's shaped by the river. And around this are other land grants to the Hassall family. This is Thomas's land. And we'll get to, well, the other maps will follow this. Now, one of the themes of life on the land before you've done all your fencing is that either your cattle will stray onto someone else's property or their cattle will stray onto yours. And the early gazettes, this is Sydney Gazette for May of 1821, strayed about 6 weeks since from Mr. Knight's yard at Liverpool, a bull stag, etc. Whoever will bring the same to Mr. Samuel Hassall at Macquarie Grove or to Mr. Oakes at Parramatta will receive 20 shillings. And there's many variations on that. If you don't bring it forward, you might be charged for all sorts of ways that they can handle those disputes. Now Macquarie Grove still exists. There's a sign that says private. So when we were there in 2023, I didn't go in. Maybe others have been in. And so I showed you briefly Samuel's land, which is at the bottom of this page, but the land that is marked in green, you can see there are land grants to Roland Hassall, Thomas Hassall, Samuel Hassall, James Hassall, and Jonathan Hassall. So there's stories about all those land grants, and there are queries about whether they were sustainable blocks of agricultural land, particularly Jonathan's. And that's not the story for tonight because we're focusing on Samuel. And we mentioned that he started receiving land grants at O'Connell Plains near Bathurst. Alison, I don't know whether at this stage you want to mention something about that. We're going to come back to some slides of that later as well. But what are we looking at here? Could you just tell us what this picture shows?
Well, I think it's quite fitting that I slip in and talk a little bit about O'Connell because it fits into the dates that you're talking about. So here we've got a shot of from the top of Mount York out towards the west, where they had to ride to come to O'Connell Plains. So they're crossing the mountains here and then down to Hartley. That pretty much a slide down that hill to Hartley, then saw them on the plains out to O'Connell. And O'Connell, because that's where the Cox's Road went around through the lagoon and back into Bathurst. So if I can just say a few things at this stage about Samuel out in O'Connell area, I just, as Graham said, Roland, I think you said Roland in 1814 was made superintendent of government stock. And in 1814, Blackson, Wentworth and Lawson crossed the Blue Mountains only a year before. In 1814, Roland Hassall and family, Elizabeth and 9 children, had been in Sydney for now 15 years. In 1814, Samuel was 17/18 years old, and Roland's job was to control the receipt, dispatch and slaughtering of cattle as the superintendent of government stock, and due to the demands of the large quantities of meat to feed the convicts and those on what we call stores. So I guess the government looked after them. Samuel O2 Hassall in 1814 was made, as Graham said, the assistant superintendent, and he was 17, 18 in that time. Very young. Our 17, 18-year-olds have just finished schooling, as Samuel was trying to do too. Now, in 1818, from that view going out to O'Connell, Roland had come back so excited about that land that he kind of dropped little hints that his children, so 6 of the 8 Hassall children were granted 800 acres each at O'Connell Plains. And a lot of them went out there to live. A lot of the names of their properties are still held there by the current owners. So that 1818 grant was sealed and defined only by 1824. So they still knew that they had it, but it was a signed off deal in 6 years later. Roland was also granted land out at O'Connell, but he never lived out there. He didn't want to live away out from the towns because I can only imagine because of all the suffering that he had through his life up until now. So he had land there, but the children actually were more active in actually living there. Samuel O'Toole also by this time had worked 4 years as the assistant superintendent, and he actually suffered so severely from exposure, other words, that he actually never fully recovered from the being so sick. During these years, he was tracking down lost government stock in the Bathurst region. And if any of you have been out there and you know how far it is then to Oberon and Rockley, out south of O'Connell, that's how far he was actually going on horseback, looking after these strayed animals. In 1819, of course, as Graham said, he married Lucy. Lucy well, she's very attractive in those photos, I thought, but she must have been tough. She was the first native, so that's the firstborn of the colonials to have crossed the Blue Mountains. It is said that Lucy was the first white woman to have ridden over the Blue Mountains. Lucy also, for many decades, had a famous bullock team which consistently travelled hauling supplies along the Bathurst Road after she was alone and looking after herself. So what a tough lady to actually do things like that. And if I might, Graham, can I just do a little bit more on the land that he lived?
Well, Alison, we'll catch up. We'll get back to it.
Okay.
And with the photos of Milford. And
yes,
yep.
yes, indeed,
okay.
Indeed.
So thank you for that. That's really great to put into that stage. So we move on. This is actually the appointment in the Sydney Gazette with the wording of the appointment, both of Roland and Samuel. All these things are available wonderfully online. And this is the land grants that Alison just spoke of. And this graphic comes from the book put together by her mother, Mileham, Hassalls and Marsdens of Early Bathurst and O'Connell. So let's see, we might have a few photos as well. And then I can come back to those, if Alison, if you want to. But I've got the Milford photos here. Did you want to speak about this image or go on to Milford?
About the land grants?
Yeah.
Oh, the land grants are very interesting. The one that's got to the right and up the top, the green, that's the Samuel O'Toole grant, quite long and narrow.
And can I just mention that the lighter green ones are the sons-in-law?
Are the
sons-in-law rather than the sons of Roland.
All right, okay. So Thomas Hassall's land, you can see the little to the left of Thomas Hassall, slightly to the top, you can see the dots on it. It looks like a backward Italian boot. That Thomas actually took over that land, and that's the land with the dots in it that he actually eventually gave to the church and built Salem Chapel on there. Plus the old barn is on that land as well, of Thomas's, but that's Thomas. I can come back and talk about Milford later, Graham, if you like.
Well, I'll show. We've got the image of Milford.
Or I can talk about it now. It doesn't matter.
Because then after we've shown that, I get to this book and you talk about the house. So we went past. We didn't go in, but we know that the current owners are aware of the historic nature of this property and have retained the name with these nice photos. Looks like a heavenly place to work, but it's probably hard work. Alison, over to you for further information.
Yes, so on that Milford shot there, in 1821, Samuel, remembering he got the grant in 1818, began construction. So he'd been married 2 years we called it Milford Vale. They think after Lucy's mother's, where she came from in Wales, Milford Vale at O'Connell Plains. It was a small structure of pise de terre with 4 main rooms, each with a fireplace and separated by a central hallway. Pise is also known as rammed earth. It is an ancient building technique that involves compacting a damp mixture of soil, including clay, sand, and gravel, into a temporary frame or formwork to build the walls. This method creates durable and sustainable structures with an excellent thermal mass controlling temperature and noise. And I'm only telling you that because was brought up in a house exactly like that. Our walls were 13 inches thick. We had the 4 rooms, each with a fireplace and a central hall down the middle. And that was at Kelso, right next to where Thomas Hassall had the first church, Holy Trinity in Kelso. Later additions to Milford were made from the stones from nearby Taranah. Taranah is between O'Connell and Lithgow. Milford is one of the earliest homes in the O'Connell area. Many original features remain in the house, including the 3 fireplaces, floorboards, pine doors, and window frames, and some of the thick pise walls, even with an original tree trunk in situ, which are now internal due to the subsequent additions. The main windows overlook and give dramatic view, as you could see by Graham's photo, right down to the Fish River Flats. Due to being robbed of material goods and horses by convicts and others in Sydney, and having to warn many of his family of being attacked by Aborigines, that was down near Camden, Samuel made his Milford front door out of original heavy colonial hardwood built to defend the early inhabitants from attacks by bushrangers. So the quote is, the Condon family bought Milford in 1966. The current Condon family owners, and I've just lost where I was up to, Patrick and Julie have successfully incorporated Samuel Hassall's old pise dwelling into their attractive home with a beautiful garden on the Wombles Road, O'Connell. Patrick and Julie attended the Hassall reunion at O'Connell in May 2023, and 202 years after Samuel and Lucy began building their family home, Milford in 1821. So isn't that nice that we, the descendants, are meeting the people who lived in that house 202, that was started 202 years ago. Just to mention also that the current history group in O'Connell are passionate to know and understand the history of O'Connell and realise the importance of the early Hassall families. Hence, the Oberon Council recently named a park Hassall Park in the middle of O'Connell. And by the way, the early Cox's Road passes through the O'Connell Plains, which I've said before. You'll notice that my background, when you're looking at me, says Hassall Park backwards. Well, that's the Hassall Park that they recently named that area as Hassall Park because of all the Hassall goings on 200 years earlier. Over to you, Graham. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. That's wonderful. I'm just wondering if I can invite someone else to read one or two of these pages. So,
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, Andrew, you have a go, and then maybe others will also. So please. We're talking about farming now, and yeah, go ahead.
Apologies that you can't see me, but I am here. So this is Samuel's farming, 1813 Thomas lives with a merchant in Sydney, and Samuel is the farmer and resides at the farm. Roland Hassall to his sister Sarah in Coventry. So that's a letter from Roland Hassall to his sister Sarah Hassall in Coventry, 26th of June. 1816. On last Lord's Day, as I was in my little room composing and committing to paper a morning prayer about 5 in the afternoon, a messenger arrived with news that 2 natives had just informed him that the whole body of Kundanora 36F natives intended to attack Mrs. MacArthur's farm, to plunder and murder all before them, and from thence to proceed down to Mr. Oxley's to act with them in the same manner, and from thence to our farm, which you must judge gave me a severe alarm on account of the little ones. That's a letter from Samuel to Thomas, March the 16th, 1816.
Thanks, Andrew. So I put that in as a representative of the type of letters that talk of the dangers that they faced, not only from those conflicts with Aboriginals, but also there were other dangers, as Alison has alluded to, from bushrangers and from rogue convicts. And when we look at the fuller history, we'll see the number of times that not only Samuel, but other members of his family were robbed at gunpoint, under threat. It's quite extensive. And so I just put this in as, and this is part of a much larger letter describing what happened, but I just put that in as being representative of the dangers of being out in rural areas. Thank you, Andrew, for that. Let's go for another one here. Robert, are you happy to read?
Yes. So farming in 1819, much beloved brother, I believe I before acknowledged the books and hat case, the latter of which am sorry to say I lost in a flood on the 5th of March last, and 'twas with much difficulty I got to shore. The Almighty alone was my protector. Early in the morning, having groans of distress firing up on Trotter's farm, I ordered the government boat under my care to be manned and taken off to there. And having been very poorly the day before, but the men not wishing to go without me, I took the helm, wrapped up as I thought very safely, having with me 5 men. When we arrived at the place, we found 3 men standing in water up to their waists, and had been in that situation a considerable time. I took them in together with their little indecipherable word, and in our way across to the highland in the midst of a most rapid current, the boatman missed his stroke, which baffled, and the next on the same side, the other side coming with all their might, in spite of the helm faced her round broadside on a standing tree, which in an instant broke her across the midships. Oh dear.
And it continues.
Okay, here we go. All hands except Thomas Hallington went instantly to the bottom. He fortunately caught the tree. I did not rise for a considerable distance. My great coat and other clothes preponderating, that's an interesting word, over my strength. However, God in his wise providence procured delivering the force of the stream carried me against the root of another tree, by which I was enabled to rise above the water, and getting into its branches, I stripped me of my clothes. Looking round, I saw two men holding a part of the boat, one of which, though a good swimmer, was drowned, and the other
Right.
not being able to maintain his hold, by which means he was saved, yet much bruised, after remaining in a tree 2 days and 3 nights. All the rest swam to shore, and that was all. Hallington remained 2 days and 2 nights before we could get them off. Had I had to have swum any further, I must have been drowned. For when I got to shore, I was so much exhausted that I could not stand alone. This brought to mind your escape at Liverpool. Samuel to Thomas, May 23rd.
Well, thank you. I know it's tough. It's like stream of consciousness writing. But again, I put this as a representative of those letters in which he talks of the near misses that he experienced, and there were drownings all around him. His workers, on several times he had near misses such as this. Horses drowned. We didn't have bridges in those days, but the New South Wales rivers were still there. And this is again representative of a type of, in a sense, a trope. It's a theme that occurs through these letters. But that intriguing last line, brought to mind your escape at Liverpool. I don't know what Thomas escaped at Liverpool, but we'll have to find out. Does anybody know about that? So he wrote it, so there must be something there for us to discover.
But
No,
it was common.
don't know about that.
I don't know about Thomas, but the Hume family had to escape from Toongabbie somewhere between 1804 and 1807, and they used a pig trough as a canoe to escape. And then they moved from Toongabbie to, which is just west of Parramatta, down to what they called Appin. The Humes come from Appin in Scotland. And it doesn't flood at Appin, but floods in that area were terribly common. And there's another one of my families, he died, he was riding a horse and got struck by lightning riding home. Drownings crossing rivers was really common. It's everywhere.
Yes.
Oh dear.
Well, we're going to continue with his experience on the land. James, I wonder whether are you happy to read?
Yeah, Graham, I'll give it a go. Farming, 1822. Dear brother, in case I should not see you in my way to Botany Bay, embrace the opportunity by Wickley to say that we expect to start tomorrow morning. We are 7 in numbers, well horsed, and hope we may be successful. Whoever 'tis a wild chase, you may expect to hear from us next Saturday or Monday. In consequence of this understanding, I am obliged to take Nanny to, not sure, having no other I can as well depend on. The cattle sent down for slaughter are 9 oxen, 1 cow of yours, 1 cow, 2 oxen of mine, as per brand. They fell off much in coming down, and therefore will not turn out so well as I at first expected in the hires. I have desired Campbell to give to Hall, and when I come down will settle with him, having Haynes and see to settle for. Should you be informed that I have a black eye, you may believe it, and though I am bruised, can assure you that I felt no inclination for B. A wagon's head came in contact with my face with such velocity as to brand me very conspicuously. I must now conclude with our affectionate love to your mother and sisters, your affected brother, Samuel to Thomas, July 9th, 1822, I assume. Thanks.
Wow.
Poor guy. Had it tough.
Do you want me to read now?
Okay, Andrew, you can have another go.
Farming again, 1823. My dear brother, how uncertain are all things here below. The late numerous occurrences tend to awaken the feelings and are loud calls to prepare for that end which befalleth every man. None are exempt. I long to hear how brother Jonathan is, and can now say that I sympathise with him. On our way home last Saturday, I received a kick from Mr. McBrien's horse on the shin, and it 'twas difficulty I rode home. I fear the bone is splintered or seriously injured. The shin is perforated about 3 inches in length, the whole leg much discoloured. 'Tis with utmost difficulty that I can, aided by a crutch, hobble to the back door, and although the pain is very severe, I have sent to Liverpool for Dr. Hill, but should he be from home, I wish you would dispatch Dr. Cowper with all speed. I wish you would write Mr. Riley and inform him of the accident, which will of course prevent my intended trip to Bathurst for a time, but will write him when that I can go. Present our love to Anne and the dear little ones, also to mother, sisters, and brothers. Yours affectionately, Samuel to Thomas. February the 5th, 1823, and I'll continue. Since you left, I have been under the necessity of selling 4 of my oxen to help pay my debts. Hence I am in a bit of a strait. Indeed, under all circumstances, am at a loss what to do first. Samuel to Thomas, April 23rd.
So just again, stop there for a moment. So by the mid-1820s, Samuel is trying to keep his farming interests going in Macquarie Grove and, Connaught Plains, requiring extensive travel, often with carting goods either way, product, wool, wheat, or foodstuffs that are required. But in all of this activity and a lot of wheeling dealing of sales, trying to optimize when to sell, when cattle are at their fattest, for example. And in my presentation, I'm not including here the manner in which sales were done to the government. That's for another time. But there was quite a demand for meat and for wool, of course. And I'm not going to the details of how they worked together to sell the wool to England through brokers. But we've got themes by the mid-1820s of a series of physical ailments and extreme pressure on cash. So those outside the family might say, look at this family, they've got land everywhere. They're in charge of so many people. They've got servants, they've got convicts, they're expanding. Yet all of that activity was not leading to much cash availability. So that's a theme from now on, is how he's going to make ends meet. At the same time that he has to, no choice but to continue those. So just a few more of these pages to give an indication of the struggles that Samuel faced. Now I might ask Anne, would you like to read?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Sorry. So 1824, farming once again. The only pleasing intelligence I can communicate at this time is the wonderful superintendence of an all-powerful God manifest in preserving me from excruciating torture on Tuesday last, being busy with the thrashing machine, driving the horses, my right foot came in contact with a cog of the large wheel and the shaft against my thigh, and had not Holloway at that moment caught a hold of the young horse and suddenly checked him, which he effected by throwing him down and thereby stopping the machine, I must have been severely torn and crushed, if not to death. I am at present much bruised in both legs, small piece pinched out of the right foot near the little toe, and the foot much squeezed, but not a bone broken, and therefore trust that after some time to be perfectly restored. The pain for 26 hours, which was truly great, is now much abated, nor can I possibly put it to the ground. I have written you particulars to prevent alarm, because report generally gains. I must now close this abruptly because the pain of my foot is increasing from my present position. Lucy joins me in love to all. Your affectionate brother, Samuel to Thomas, July 1st. It's a clumsy fella, isn't he?
I'm starting to think that, but it was good that we had a nurse to read it. But it doesn't help now. But you know, this is the struggles. One each year. One each year.
That's actually an interesting passage. I haven't seen that one before, because after Samuel dies, Lucy marries again, and she marries J.J. Howell, and J.J. Howell dies in a ploughing accident when he was, I think, about his 50s, at Burrell or somewhere out further west, and he broke his leg when something went wrong with the horse and the plough. So, and then Lucy became a widow a second time because of a very similar type accident, not a winnowing, but a ploughing instead. These accidents were common because you're dealing with horses that are unpredictable.
Farming accidents, agricultural accidents.
And no
Absolutely.
treatments either. So, yeah.
No antibiotics.
Nah,
No.
exactly. Yeah.
Real tough.
Well, I don't know who to ask to read this. It gets worse.
Mhm.
Jane,
read
Jane, would you like to read? If you
Okay,
wish.
here we go. Yeah.
No, I was sorry. I was saying,
yeah,
suggesting
yeah.
Jane. Sorry, Jane.
Sorry.
Jane, would you like to read?
Jane's not with us. She had to
Oh.
leave about 10 minutes ago.
Oh, okay. I didn't note that. So, James,
Okay,
please go ahead.
James, James will go ahead. Farming, 1828. I find that my health is daily on the decline, and that my change is so sudden and frequent. As such, am I impaired that I am unable to attend to business in general, and finding the grazing is very much depressed. Our mutual benefit thereby not so well. I feel that the whole responsibility of your stock concerns is in my hands, together with my own, too much for me to attend to. I therefore, my dear brother, with much reluctance, have to point out to you the absolute necessity of a division being made in the concerns for our mutual interest, and I trust my brother will believe me when I say that I have in a proposal of the kind his welfare at heart as much as my own. Mr. Fisher's early departure for Bathurst has prompted me thus to disclose my wishes to you, and trust if they meet your acquaintance that you will make arrangements for the division which cannot take place for 6 months. You are aware of the uncertainty of the markets and present state of the colony. My circumstances render it necessary that I make a sacrifice of my property to meet the demands which are daily coming on me. And in doing so, yours, of course, will suffer with my own. I trust you will therefore let me hear from or see you as soon as convenient, to give yourself, if what I have proposed for our mutual benefit and the interest of our families be done. Samuel to Thomas, August 25th, 1828. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So that was 1828, and we know that Samuel died at the age of 34. And this is the notice. It's I find it quite a strong statement that was put in the press so soon after his passing. Died at his residence at Macquarie Grove on the 25th ultimate after a lingering illness, Mr. Samuel Lucy Hassall. 7 years ago, we happened to be a good deal at Mr. Hassall's house. A more hospitable, kind man than he we know not in New South Wales. Had Mr. Hassall had the benefits of a liberal education, he would have been a shining man. As it was, he was a very solid, useful character. We never knew one who in his own person united so much of two opposite qualities, namely economy, love of wealth, and generosity. He was a keen man of business, yet kind, hospitable, and benevolent, all bottomed on a due sense of religion. We have said Mr. Hassall would with greater advantages have been a shining character. He was naturally ambitious. Hence, when his property, entirely agricultural, fell to 1/4 of its value, accompanied by 4 years of failure of his harvests, he found he could not meet his pecuniary engagements. Unhappily, Mr. H had not firmness enough to contend with this blow to his ambition. At length, one of his creditors arrested him. This preyed on his spirits. After this, he became an altered man. He drooped and lingered on an unhappy existence till he died. He has left one of the best of wives and mothers with a numerous young family to deplore his premature death. Mr. Hassall was about 35 years of age. Before he caught an internal disease by lying about in the woods at the time, he was one of the superintendents of the government herds at Bathurst. He was a very stout, active young man and bade fair to live to be an old man. His funeral was most numerous and respectably attended. All the neighbouring magistrates and neighbours and all who recollected what the deceased 5 years ago bade fair to be, namely one of the first settlers of Australian birth in the colony, were deeply affected to see his remains thus descend to the grave before he had reached the prime of life. His widow and family are, we are happy to learn, left in comfortable circumstances. You may have seen that before because that's been used in several places. I find it a startlingly frank assessment of his circumstances if it was, so soon after his passing. But there it is. I've got a little bit more to share because now we've still got this. Lucy is still with us, and so I've just got a little more to share before we get to the end of the presentation. So Lucy, of course, was still a young woman, and she entered into a relationship with John Howell, who was I understand was in charge of the family's stock. He eventually became a landowner. And together they had 5 children, and they're listed here between 1832 and 1842. And then, as Robert has mentioned, her second husband, John Howell, dies in Gundaroo, Yass. Now, just 1 or 2 more pages will flow before we get to dear Lucy's passing in 1882, which is still another 4 decades. Samuel's will, which he concluded 2 years before his passing, so he's only a young man, but he has a will. He must have had some premonition based on his accidents and ill health. He allowed Lucy to continue to live at Macquarie Grove for the rest of her natural life. She lived there for approximately 10 years. And when she married, she moved to Arkstone Forest with John Howell. And of course, then he passed away a few years after that. She returned to Macquarie Grove, which was then had been in the hands of James Mileham, I think. And she started to apply for her own land grant. So this is in Merrill Hope's book. She applied for land grants to, quote, as a native, the daughter of the first assistant surgeon of the colony, a widow and a mother of 5 young children. So she started obtaining her own land. She continued to operate the business, the whole farming business of Milford Vale, which we've seen into her later years. And it's also been mentioned that she had a bullock team that would transport goods back and forth over the Blue Mountains. And I think there's room for more research on the life of Lucy Howell. Interestingly, Lucy is interred with her first husband rather than her second. She's with Samuel at Cobbity, and this is in 2023. We're looking at the graves. The grave of Samuel O'To has a copy of original wording, which has now disappeared from the sandstone. Sacred to the memory of Samuel O'To Hassall at Macquarie Grove, July 1830, aged 34. Also at his late residence, Thomas Hancox was deceased at the age of 30, their son. And then also in sacred memory of Lucy, the beloved wife of Samuel O'To Hassall and widow of John James Howell, who died in 1882. So that's it's just a little, a sort of an insight into the struggles and challenges of these two remarkable people, their character, the strength of character, the challenges they faced. And it does pose some historical questions for us as to whether it was actually feasible to run so many properties. Was that a factor in his untimely death? We also want to start looking into the lives of their children, from whom we are descended, and some of us on this call. But we just wanted to lay out some of those factors in the struggles of their lives. And I really wanted to point to the noble character that Samuel had, the aspirations, the loyalty he had to his whole family, and particularly to his brother Thomas. And so I hope this presentation has brought something new for you and something interesting and something for us to discuss together. So I open up for any questions and comments, and back to Andrew.
Yes, thanks very much, Graham. Very poignant and heartrending stories there of those letters. Wonderful to have them. And my sister is married to a farmer, and he has managed to escape many farming accidents, which is very good. But I might just remind him of our mutual great-great-great-grandfather Samuel. Another question is that Samuel had 5 children to Lucy. The first one, Roland James, died, and then Thomas Hancox died without issue. And then several of us here are descended of James Mileham Hassall, but there's a sister, Anne, I think, and she had a lot of children, and I've been in touch with some of, one particular family of theirs, and his name is Dr. Mileham Hayes, also known as Dr. Jazz. He's about 78 or 79 now, and he lives out at Laidley. And I don't think he really cares for his history and so on and so forth. But once again, I'm just mindful of all the descendants of the female Hassalls that we don't know and we don't have any representation of here today. It's just amazing. Has anybody got any questions, as Graham said?
you were talking about Elizabeth Hassall, the daughter of Samuel O'Toole and Lucy Mileham. Is
Is
that
it
the one?
Elizabeth, is it? Yes, I think so,
Um,
yes.
Elizabeth Ann Hassall. She
Yep.
married William Howell, and he'd been born in Herefordshire and was related to Lucy's second husband. And they had, wait for it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I've lost count now, about 9 kids, and they all had children. And Elizabeth Ann Hassall, she was born at Macquarie Grove in 1821, um, and died at Landgrove, Burrawa. So a lot of these families lived around Burrawa. And in fact, when I started talking about reunions, I found out my accountant in Cooma, her family comes from Burrawa, and she's descended from Lucy Mileham and J.J. Howell from the second family. So there's, I'm sure that you meet people in Australia who are your relatives and you don't even know, because we have so many people in the family history. And as Andrew says, we haven't traced them all. This family is traced, but many of them aren't.
Mm.
Well, thanks for that, Robert. And look, apologies. I did have a slide of all the children, and somehow I got knocked out when I'm making the slideshow. It disappeared. So the James Mileham, who some of us on this call are descended from, had 14 children.
Yes. And his wife was one of 14 children from the Hume family. So, um, and then her grandmother was from the Huon de Kerelos, and they were one of 8 family. And then they came from the Mitchells, and there was one of 10. So the families are absolutely huge.
And that was very difficult for me to trace that from Count Gabriel Murray Huon de Keralou through to Anne Hume, because one of Huon de Keralou's daughters got married at the tender young age of 14.
Yes, that's our
And
ancestor.
yes, and then she begat children, and then we're a descendant of the next generation. And so there was generations there very squashed together. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'll end the recording now, and just thank you all very much for attending this session.